Hello, and welcome to another episode of Broadcast Movie and TV Talk. I know that I've been talking a lot lately about DC movies, specifically the ones of the animated variety, but this is not that. I'm very excited that I have finally gotten around to watching The Batman, and it's time to talk about this movie. Remember, there will be spoilers. The Batman starts off by showing off Gotham City, which looks really good in this movie. Bruce Wayne / Batman is narrating, and we see the bat signal, and this leads into the first fight scene, which also is the first scene we get to see Batman in the suit. Then the mayor gets murdered by the Riddler, and that's really the premise of this movie for most of its runtime. And that's because obviously Batman and Jim Gordon don't know who the Riddler is or where he is, etc. The Riddler is going about and killing high-class government officials that have not been particularly truthful to the people of Gotham. This all starts to culminate when the Riddler starts targeting Bruce Wayne because he believes that Bruce has to answer for the sins of his father. The sins of his father are when he ran for mayor, he promised a renewal project for Gotham City. Then Bruce's parents get murdered a week later, and this renewal project kind of fell to the wayside. The investigation leads Batman to the Penguin, who doesn't really help him. Also, the Falcone family is involved in this, which means that Selina Kyle is also involved, and yes, we get a bit of Catwoman and Batman working together, and also they have a bit of a relationship going on too. Eventually, they end up catching Riddler, but things don't stop there. Riddler has vans that are going to blow up the seawall around Gotham, which they do, and that causes a major flood. And then we get shots of Batman helping the people of Gotham. Then there's a bit of a time skip, and all of Gotham is flooded, and the movie ends with Selina and Batman going their separate ways, and Batman realizing that the people of Gotham need someone they can put their hopes into, and not someone who's just obsessed with vengeance for his past, since he learned the truth about his parents. There's also a moment with the Riddler in prison, talking to who I assume is going to be the Joker, and they talk about working together. And that's pretty much it for the plot of this movie. So what did I personally think of The Batman? Let me first start with the fact that this movie gives me the vibes of the Dark Knight trilogy and the Tim Burton Batman movie all at the same time, and I like that. Now, one thing I kept faith in ever since seeing the trailers for this movie is Robert Pattinson himself. He gets a lot of crap for his role in the Twilight movies, but from what I've heard, he didn't actually like being in those movies, so I mean, why would he try his hardest to be in a role he didn't want to be in anyway? However, I think he did fantastic playing Batman in this movie. I think, on the subject of Batman himself, he stays in the suit for the majority of the movie, which is an interesting choice. It really shows in this movie that Bruce Wayne is more of a mask for Batman, if that makes sense. Like, the only way that Gotham can be saved is by Batman, and Bruce knows this. Plus, the few times that Bruce Wayne goes out into the world, he doesn't look like a rich guy. He doesn't act like one either. He doesn't embrace the businessman side of Bruce Wayne that, we see in, like, the Dark Knight trilogy. He doesn't wear fancy clothes. He doesn't hold conversations well with people. His appearance is not neat and tidy, and so on. He spends more time being Batman, and I find that an interesting take. One of the interesting aspects of this Batman is while he has this really nice suit that's all technological, cool armor, gadgets, and so on, it doesn't make him good at being Batman. There's a scene when he has to escape by jumping off of a rooftop, and yeah, he can make a wingsuit out of his bat suit and fly off, but he ends up making a less than smooth landing and hurting himself. This Batman is still figuring out how to be Batman in this movie, and we also get a complete arc of Batman in this movie, as he starts out thinking that it's all about vengeance, and then realizing by the end that he needs to be something that the people of Gotham can look up. I think that the Riddler was a fantastic villain. Why does the Riddler do what he does in this movie? Well, you find out that Riddler was an orphan that had hope in the promises of people like Bruce Wayne's dad, but none of those promises ever came true, and Riddler had to live a life with growing up being forgotten by everyone. That's why he murders government officials and targets Bruce himself, and is actually the one that knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman. He gives a terrific line to Batman about how when Bruce's parents were murdered, everything was about, oh, poor Bruce Wayne has dead parents and is an orphan, but, he gets to live in a mansion and has $1 gazillion to his name, while the rest of the world forgets about people like the Riddler. This Riddler is like a reflection on Bruce Wayne in many ways, and that's very nice, actually. Now, I know some people are not going to like this version of the Riddler because it's not accurate to the comic, but, I think fine, considering in the comics that he wears like a bright green onesie. I don't think that would have worked in this movie, honest to God. And if you really want to see that, go watch DC animated movies or read the comics. Now, probably a hot take is that I really don't think this movie needed Catwoman, as she's barely in it or does anything Catwoman-like. I also don't like her, robber mask, whatever the hell it's supposed to be. It just looks really bad. Maybe it's because that, they have the Falcone family in this movie. And it's hard to do that storyline without having Selina be in the movie, but her part was so small that it just could have not been there, if you ask me. Now I'm gonna say this next part as good as I can. The lighting and the cinematography in this movie are great. There's a lot of really fantastic shots and really nice uses of colors and lighting in this movie, and it makes this movie feel unique. One of my favorite parts starts with the car chase between Batman and Penguin. Everything is kind of dark, and you just see the black blob of the Batmobile, an outline sort of, and then the car turns on and you just hear the roar of the engine. You see the blue from the jet engine in the back, and then the orangish red of the headlights come on. It's a beautiful introduction for this car in the movie. The whole chase is just a lot of reds and orange on the black of the night. And one moment when Penguin thinks he's disposed of Batman, Batmobile comes pouncing down on the ground, and Penguin's face just goes pale. It's such a great moment. When Penguin ends up crashing and the car goes upside down, you get this shot with the camera upside down from inside Penguin's car of Batman just walking over, and again, the scene is only lit by a fire behind the Batmobile, so you get the reflection of the Batmobile and the fire lighting the scene, and it's just a fantastic sequence, one of many fantastic sequences in this movie. Something I had been enjoying before I even saw this movie was the score for the Batman by Michael, I don't know how you say his last name, Giacchino. The themes for the Batman, Riddler, and Catwoman are all fantastically composed, and the whole score is just well done and implemented well into the movie. And it is also great for listening to outside of. Having watched a good amount of DC animated movies before seeing this movie reminded me of technically 2 animated Batman movies that I had watched recently. Those would be both parts of the Long Halloween movies. Those movies deal with a Bruce Wayne that's pretty new to being Batman and having to solve a long, elaborate murder case. I just felt that the Batman had a lot of similarities to the Long Halloween movies, and I am perfectly okay with that, because those movies are great. Overall, The Batman is one of the best live-action Batman movies and interpretations of the character in a while. I know that originally they wanted to do a solo Batman movie for Ben Affleck's Batman, but I'm glad they didn't, and I'm glad they went this route because it worked out very well. I've heard that this is supposedly the first movie in a new trilogy, and I'm looking forward to the rest of this trilogy as long as they don't screw things up. I also know that HBO is going to be doing a show based on Penguin from this movie, and I'm probably not going to see that, as I feel Penguin was not all that important to this movie and not that much of an interesting character in general. But that's just me. I also really want this Batman's Batmobile. It just looks so cool. I know it's divisive, I know some people like it, some people don't, but I think it looks cool as hell, especially when you see it used in the movie. The Batman is a great and enjoyable movie. That's all I have to say, so if you want to add to the conversation, leave a comment below. As always, thanks for listening, and goodbye.